Joe, I've been married twice, and what they do in this movie, I really wish I had done that with both of my weddings.
What was that, the outfits?
No, the body tied to the back of the wedding car with the cans. Oh, when I think of all the people I would have loved to have literally dragged behind me as I drove off into married life.
Gomez and Fester are brothers, right? Their relationship reminds me most of me and absolutely nobody in my family.
That's interesting, because it's exactly the opposite for me.
You and your brother were close, like Gomez and Fester?
No, my brother and I threw knives at each other like Gomez and Fester.
Well, that sounds lovely.
And what's the name of the hand?
The hand is called Thing.
You know, if Thing had been at my house when I was Pugsley's age, we would have had a much closer relationship.
They avoid what a disembodied hand and a young man will be up to, don't they?
I bet the porn version doesn't have that problem.
I'm not Googling that.
Suit yourself, but somewhere out there, I guarantee there is an Addams Family Values hand job.
Welcome to Does This Still Work? The podcast looks at old movies and asks, does this still work? I'm Joe Dixon.
And I'm George Romacka. And today we're discussing Addams Family Values from 1993 and some historical context. First, podcasty stuff. You can reach us at dtswpod@gmail.com, on Facebook, Letterboxd, and on our YouTube channel. Joe is on Blue Sky at joedixon.bsky.social. Please tell your friends about us. Even the ones who are burying a live cat in their front yard for some reason. And leave 5-star ratings everywhere. You can pick what we watch and get extra per episode content by funding us on Patreon for as little as $1 a month at patreon.com/dtswpod. Just like the patrons who chose this movie, because this is a Patron's Choice episode.
It is indeed.
And we have a new patron.
Yay!
Please welcome our newest member in the reserved seating section at $5 a month, the Mountie of Madness.
Thank you, Mountie of Madness. Are you Canadian?
I have no idea where they are.
Well, I'm asking them. They can write in. They can write in and ask if they ask. They can write in and say, hey, I'm Canadian, because why Mountie?
Yeah, good question. Thank you so much for becoming a patron. I hope we're worth it.
Yes, thank you so much, Mountie.
Now, Joe, take us back to 1993.
And that's the way it was.
So, it's 1993. What were some macabre or weird stories from that year that would match this movie? The most obvious would be Lorena and John Bobbitt. George, read this headline from the News and Messenger of Virginia.
City's famous victim keeping a low profile.
From the article, the 26-year-old Virginia man whose wife cut off his penis with a kitchen knife returned home Saturday, saying he expected a full recovery from the operation in which the organ was reattached. I am anxious to return to work and begin rebuilding my life, the nightclub bouncer and former Marine said in a statement. End quote. Well, that unnamed victim was, of course, John Bobbitt. Do you young folks know about this story? Lorena Bobbitt, John's wife, accused him of raping her, and that's why she cut him. He denied raping her, and he would go on to be acquitted of that crime. This is all from Wikipedia now. Quoting. John was later acquitted of marital sexual assault by a jury of 9 women and 3 men. He gave multiple versions of what had happened that evening in question, relating at various times to police and to the court that they had had sex, that Lorena had tried to initiate sex, but he had been too tired, that they had had sex, but he had slept through it, and that the sex had been consensual. When Lorena was arrested on June 23rd, 1993, she told the police he always, and by the way, this is Joe now, English is not her first language, okay, so this is why she talks like this. He always have orgasm, and he doesn't wait for me ever to have orgasm. He's selfish. This conversation with Detective Peter Wentz was tape recorded, and the transcript was read later in trial by Mary Grace O'Brien, the Prince William County Assistant Commonwealth Attorneys prosecuting Lorena. During the trial, the Bobbitts revealed details of their volatile relationship and the events that led to the assault. Lorena stated that John sexually, physically, and emotionally abused her during their marriage. claiming that he had flaunted his infidelities and forced her to have an abortion. Her defense attorneys, who included defense lawyer Blair D. Howard, maintained that John's constant abuse eventually caused Lorena to snap because she was suffering from clinical depression and a possible bout of post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, due to the abuse. After 7 hours of deliberation, the jury found Lorena not guilty by reason of insanity caused by an irresistible impulse to sexually wound John. As a result, she could not be held liable for her actions. Under state law, the judge ordered Lorena to undergo a 45-day evaluation period at Central State Hospital in Petersburg, after which she would be released. In 1995, after 6 years of marriage, John and Lorena finalized their divorce. End quote. George, what do you remember about this case?
I remember that she cut his dick off. I also remember that it was reattached and that he went on to do some porn.
He did go on to do some porn, yes. So it was obviously reattached very well.
Yeah. Annoyingly, those are the things that stuck in my head.
I think that's understandable because that's pretty much all anybody really talked about. They didn't really get into the rest of the details of that. He got his dick cut off. He got his dick cut off. And there's all the late night jokes and all this sort of stuff. And then, of course, he went on go on to do porn, which, I don't know. People were fascinated by that as well. I don't know how well the porn did, though. And did people want to see a reattached penis? I guess some did.
Yeah. I mean, it probably did better than most do as far as, actually bringing in income.
It is a really incredible story. Just really got there were a number of women who obviously felt for Lorena. And, of course, a number of men. It became a man-woman type thing. The men were like, cutting off the dick. This is unacceptable. And the women were like, well, you abuse. Although he makes that statement that I read that she initiates sex and he slept through it. How can a man sleep through sex?
Good question, Joe.
I don't think that's possible.
I mean, I think it's possible, but I think that points to a medical condition.
I mean, unless you're drugged or something, maybe. But to sleep through it?
I really don't want to keep thinking about these two having sex, Joe. Can we move on?
Yes, you're right. Let's move on. Another unusual story from 1993 is the trial of the wife of Lobster Boy. George, read this headline from Fort McMurray Today, a publication that is published in Alberta, Canada.
Wife says family was driven to kill her husband, who was known as Lobster Boy.
I will read. A sideshow performer known as Lobster Boy was so brutal to his family he drove them to pay someone to have him killed, defense lawyer said Wednesday. Grady Stiles, wife and stepson, said they were acting in self-defense when they paid a teenage neighbor $1,500 to shoot the 55-year-old man in the head last Thanksgiving in suburban Gibbonston.
Hey, can we break in for a second? What was the going rate in the professional? Was it $5,000 a head?
Heyo!
This kid was being severely underpaid.
Yeah, I don't know what the going price is to kill your husband. I guess it fluctuates with the market. Back to the article. There was no other alternative, the wife's lawyer, Arnold Levine, said in his opening statement at the trio's trial.
So they couldn't have just put giant rubber bands on his hands and boiled him?
Heyo! This drunken man set out to destroy his family. Stiles was called the Lobster Boy because a hereditary condition gave him claw-like hands. People with stage names such as the Bearded Lady and the Alligator Man are expected to be called as witnesses during the 2-week trial. End quote. Now, I read up on this guy. The Bearded Lady and Alligator Man testified about what an asshole Grady was. And get this, years before Lobster Boy was murdered, he himself committed a murder. He shot his daughter's fiancé the day before the wedding. Why? Was the guy abusive or something? No, Lobster Bastard just did not like him, so he shot the dude. Did Mr. Stiles go to jail for this? He did not. He is put on house arrest because no prison was equipped to keep a Lobster Boy incarcerated. His disability was an actual get-out-of-jail-free card.
Okay, how does that fucking work?
I don't know. It's 1993 and they had nothing for lobsters, I guess. So you had to have house arrest. I mean, it's incredible that this is true. I'm not making this up. That's wild. When I read that, like, wait a minute, what? They couldn't even put him in a prison hospital? House arrest? He murdered somebody. When Grady got murdered, his wife accused him of being an abusive drunk, as it says in the article. That did not save her. She did go to jail, as did the fellow she hired to bump her husband off. George, are you familiar with the Lobster Boy murder?
Well, I am now.
Let me tell you, this took some real digging. What is another unusual story from 1993?
Yeah, lobsters are usually found on the bottom of the seafloor, so you have to go pretty deep for it.
Indeed. Boy, you're really coming up with the jokes today, George. All right, my friend, tell us about Addams Family Values.
All righty. This was directed by Barry Sonnenfeld. We've both seen his work in Men in Black and the 1991 Addams Family that will be referenced a lot.
Yeah, because we're looking at the sequel.
Yep.
And we didn't watch the original. Anyway, I've also seen his work in Get Shorty.
And I've seen his work in Wild Wild West. This was written by, Charles Addams, who invented the Addams Family. We've both seen it. He didn't really write for this.
No, he was, I think, dead or something, wasn't he?
I think he wrote for the original TV series, and
he wrote the comic strips, obviously.
Yeah. So we've both seen the 1991 Addams Family.
And I've seen the Addams Family TV series that ran from 1964 to 1966. I'm not that old. I watched them in reruns.
Mm-hmm. And I watched the much newer series, Wednesday.
I hear that's good.
I thought so.
Okay.
This was also written by Paul Rudnick. And for the show, we've seen his work in Jeffrey, and we've both seen his work in and Out.
Yes. He's a very funny man.
Blurbs. IMDb says, the Addams family try to rescue their beloved Uncle Fester from his gold-digging new love, a black widow named Debbie. That happens.
Mm-hmm.
YouTube, which blessedly had this available for free.
It did.
Which allows me to watch it on 2x speed when I'm trying to write the summary, says, it's love at first fright when Gomez and Morticia welcome a new addition to the Addams household, Pubert, their soft, cuddly, mustachioed baby boy. As Fester falls hard for voluptuous nanny Debbie Jelinski, Wednesday and Pugsley discover she's a Black Widow murderess who plans to add Fester to her collection of dead husbands. The family's future grows bleaker when the no-good nanny marries Fester and has the kids shipped off to summer camp. But Wednesday still has a thing or two up her sleeve.
Yeah, she doesn't really help at all in that particular situation about the marriage. She has her own problems. But I have to say, what Thing does. Thing actually said.
Thing pulls it out. Yeah, he's...
So to speak.
Yeah, he's handy to have around. I didn't intend that to be the pun, but he's a very handy member of the family.
He is. I have to say, though, this thing has always driven me crazy. I've never understood why there is a need to put the ESS at the end of it. She's a murderer. What's a murderess?
Yeah, it's like the letter Kenny thing. You can't just make a girls' team by adding S to the name. Or S.
I read this old book, I can't remember which it was, maybe more than one, where there's a female doctor and she's called a doctress. I'm like,
God.
What? What's a doctress? What is that? Oh, by the way, real quick, because I know this information, so I'm going to share it with you now. Pubert was the original name for...
Pugsley.
Pugsley, yes, exactly. Yep. But when it was put on TV, because before that, the comic strips, they didn't have any names. But when it came to TV show, they had to have names. And Charles Addams said, oh, well, we'll call him Pubert. And they said, no, that sounds dirty. We'll call him Pugsley.
Yeah. So it was sort of like, it was good. I'm glad they got it in there. For what it's worth. I feel obliged to assume that the listener hasn't ever been exposed to this franchise. So when I say something like, this film opens to Uncle Fester howling at a full moon, I would expect it to be understood that we're watching a film about wolves. Not that Christopher Lloyd, made up like a blurry Emperor Palpatine, was standing on the roof howling. The thing you need to know about the Addams family is that they are their own cadre of off-brand horror tropes. Uncle Fester is basically an immortal cadaver.
And Uncle Fester Addams is played by Christopher Lloyd. For the podcast, we've seen him in Who Framed Roger Rabbit, Clue, Mr. Mom, and One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. Both George and I have seen him in the Addams Family 1991 version, the predecessor to this, and we both seen him in Back to the Future and Star Trek III, The Search for Spock. And I've seen him in A Million Ways to Die in the West and To Be or Not to Be.
And I've heard his work in Anastasia.
That was a cartoon, I take it.
Yep. Next, we meet Granny Addams with the two youngest Addamses, Wednesday and Pugsley. They're out in the yard, burying a live cat.
Now, we only hear it. We don't know if that's actually a cat in that box.
I don't know why it would make that cat sound when they shake the box if it's dead.
It's a weird family. Who knows what they put together?
If it's an undead cat, why are they burying it?
I don't know why they're burying it, but it could be some other creature they put together. They like that sort of thing, in this family. Anyway, Granny is played by Carol Kane. For the podcast, we've seen her in The Last Detail.
Saw a lot of her in The Last Detail.
And yes, we did see a lot of her in The Last Detail. Annie Hall and Jawbreaker. I've also seen her in Carnal Knowledge, which I'm pretty sure she was naked in that as well. Dog Day Afternoon, Between the Temples, and The Muppet Movie. Between the Temples actually was the last thing I've seen her in.
And I've seen her in The Princess Bride, Scrooged, and Joe versus the Volcano.
That's not about me.
It is not about Joe.
Wednesday Addams is played by Christina Ricci. George and I have both seen her in The Addams Family, 1991, and Sleepy Hollow. And I've seen her in Buffalo 66, The Opposite of Sex, and The Ice Storm.
And I've seen her in Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. And Pugsley Addams is played by Jimmy Workman. Joe and I have both seen him in The Addams Family from 1991, and I've seen him in As Good as It Gets. The Addamses live in a decrepit mansion. Well, it looks decrepit on the outside. It's just mildly dusty on the inside. The butler, Lurch, plays an organ. The musical kind, Joe.
Oh, okay.
Lurch is the closest thing to an extant horror trope, a lanky Frankenstein's monster, like if Dr. Frankenstein made him out of Gabe from The Office. Lurch is played by Carol Strukian, and Joe and I have both seen him in The Addams Family 1991 and Men in Black.
Mm-hmm.
In the living room, the matriarch of the family, Morticia, sits on a sofa, knitting. Her husband, Gomez, arm wrestles an animated disembodied hand named Thing and wins.
Morticia Addams is played by Angelica Houston. For the podcast, we've seen her in Manhattan Murder Mystery, Crimes or Misdemeanors, and One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. That's come up a lot as well, actually, now that I think about it.
Mm-hmm.
We've also seen her in The Addams Family, 1991, of course, both George and I. And I've seen her in Pritzi's Honor, The French Dispatch, she was a narrator in that, The Royal Tenenbaums, Buffalo 66, again, that also comes up twice, again. The Player, and This is Spinal Tap.
And I've seen her in Ever After, A Cinderella Story, and heard her in Isle of Dogs.
Which dog was she?
I don't remember.
Gomez Addams is played by Raul Julia. George and I have both seen him in, of course, The Addams Family, 1981, and I've seen him in The Organization, 1971, and The Panic in Needle Park.
And I've seen him in Street Fighter. He died like a year after this movie came out.
Yes. But they released Street Fighter after he died.
Yep. Which, I mean, he did that movie because his kids were fans of the Street Fighter video games.
Yes.
So I get it. Absolutely horrible movie. And Thing is played, for what it's worth, by Christopher Hart. And we've both seen this acting of this hand in The Addams Family 1991 also.
You know, it's weird I guess it's nice that they brought the guy back, but they literally could have had any hand in there. And really have to bring back the actor.
So Morticia has an announcement that will inject some chaos into their evening and into the next 18 years or so.
Gomez.
Cara mia.
Marvelous news. I'm going to have a baby. Right now.
Which is fucking hilarious. Like, she there's no indication that she is otherwise pregnant.
No.
She's just going to have one right the fuck now.
Yep.
They rush to a hospital where nobody seems to mind Thing leading the way. Gomez gets reassurance from Morticia that this is as painful as she hoped it would be, while their children torment another child in the waiting room with facts.
And the stork flew down from heaven and left a diamond under a leaf in the cabbage patch, and the diamond turned into a baby.
Our parents are having a baby, too. They had sex.
Accurate.
Yep. That reminds me, I don't know if I have to tell a story again, but that...
Sure, tell it.
Me and my ex, we go down to Florida. My ex is pregnant with our first child, and my mother looks at us and, well, how did that happen? And my grandfather looks up from his vodka and says, they had sex, Michelle.
Now, to be clear, the reason she asked why that happened, because you weren't married at the time, right? I think that's why she was...
Oh, we were then.
Oh, you were then at that time. Then why...
We got married by a judge before we made that trip.
Ah, okay.
Because I needed to get her on my insurance because she was pregnant.
Mm.
After a slight push and some Thing-involved gags, Gomez bursts into the waiting area to announce...
It's an Addams.
We get a title card and the family arrives at home with their new Addams.
Mm-hmm.
Thing plays with a single roller skate so it can become a Chekhov's device later.
Indeed, yes.
The baby's room matches the rest of the dismal decor, complete with a dangling knife mobile over the crib. The baby boy, Pubert, has a mustache like his father. And Pubert Addams is played by the twin girls, Caitlin and Kristen Hooper.
Did you ever wish your kids had facial hair when they were babies?
No, Joe, I never wished that. On the stairs, Wednesday and Pugsley saw through the banister supports, while Wednesday convinces her brother that when a new child is born, an existing one must die, because there can only be two, like the Sith or something. Later, Granny will tell them that that's not true. At least, not anymore. The rest of the family gathers around the baby's crib to get their oohs and ahs on. Pubert fires a flaming arrow at them.
You know, I just realized... I'm surprised there weren't more Rosemary Baby type jokes in that whole situation with because it's similar to them being around the crib, except there it's deadly serious.
Yeah. For the next few minutes, the older kids try various ways of murdering their newest sibling to no avail. Fester and Gomez describe how they tried to kill each other when they were kids.
You know, it's really interesting. This is I believe it's PG rated, and this is obviously a mainstream film, and yet the joke in it is the children trying to kill another child, a baby, literally. If you stop to think about it, that's really fucked up.
I mean, sure, but also cartoons had lots of mayhem in them, and those were definitely aimed at children.
It was aimed at children, but seldom were the children the actual victim in the story.
Yeah, well, this was also PG-13.
Okay.
I just checked. To try and restore harmony, and to give Morticia time to seek out the dark forces and join their hellish crusade, the parents hire a nanny. And then another, and another, because Wednesday and Pugsley keep scaring them off. A woman named Debbie arrives, claiming to have been out of town until just a moment ago. She is their last nanny hope.
Debbie Jelinski is played by Joan Cusack. And for the show, we've seen her in Working Girl, a test episode. We never released that, did we?
Nope, because I lost all the original files somehow.
Okay. We've also seen her in High Fidelity, Toys, and 16 Candles. And we've both seen her in and Out. And I've seen her in Gross Point Blank, Hero, and Broadcast News.
And I've seen her in My Bodyguard and heard her in Toy Story 2. The parents introduce Debbie to everyone. Fester is insta-smitten. That night, Debbie watches an Unsolved Mysteries kind of show about a Black Widow woman who seduces, marries, and kills rich men. That woman is her, and we see from the magazines and news clippings around her that her new target is Fester. The parents and Fester go out for the day. Wednesday spies on Debbie as Debbie roots through Fester's papers, remarking aloud at all of the various assets he owns. Wednesday lets Debbie know that she's on to her. So Debbie sells the parents on their children really desperately wanting to go to summer camp, but being too shy to ask for it.
Which, you would think those two would go like, our kids want to go to summer camp?
And you would think that they wouldn't go to their kids and be like, kids, is this really what you want?
Yeah, exactly. They do seem to be, as crazy as they are, they do seem close enough to actually talk to each other.
Yeah. So, the ambulatory Addams children are driven to Camp Chippewa. Wednesday sarcastically translates Chippewa as meaning orphan, but that's not true. It doesn't mean that. It can actually mean one of three things, and Chippewa is an Englishification of the Ojibwe tribe. And this was one of those times where I really, really wish that I'd watched the movie earlier in the week, because I would have said, hey, no, I'll take the cold open. I'll try and write something, a parody of Gordon Lightfoot's Wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald. Oh. Because the opening lines to that are, the legend lives on from the Chippewa on down of the lake that they call Gitchigumi.
Yes, and that would have been interesting, but would you have had a hand job joke in it? I don't think so.
I would not have had a hand job joke in it, Joe.
See, so that's where we differ.
The first person they meet is another camper, Amanda Buckman, a blonde-haired, blue-eyed avatar of class privilege. And Amanda Buckman is played by Mercedes McNabb, and we've both seen her in the 1991 Addams Family, where she was a Girl Scout. And if I remember correctly, she was selling cookies to the Addamses, and Wednesday asks, are they made from real Girl Scouts? The camp is run by the campiest of camp counselors, Gary and Becky Granger. Becky Martin Granger is played by Christine Baranski. For the show, we've seen her in Jeffrey, The Birdcage, and How the Grinch Stole Christmas, and we've both seen her in Chicago and Cruel Intentions.
So that's our second Jeffrey. The writer wrote this movie, and here's Christine Baranski.
Yep.
Baranski, excuse me. Now, Gary Granger is played by Peter McNoll, and I've seen him in Bean, and we both seen him in Ghostbusters 2.
And once the counselors announce the official welcome, the kids break off into their respective cliques. We meet one last child, an outsider, a glasses-wearing nerd named Joel. He hates it here.
Joel Glicker is played by David Krumholtz. For the show, we've seen him in 10 Things I Hate About You, and George and I have both seen him in This Is the End, A Futile and Stupid Gesture, and The Ballad of Buster Scruggs. And I've seen him in Sausage Party and Oppenheimer. Well, talk about hand jobs, Sausage Party. Get it? All right. And George, what have you seen him in?
I've seen him in Walk Hard, The Dewey Cox Story.
There's a lot of dick jokes there, if you notice. Sausage Party, Walk Hard, Dewey Cox.
Yep.
Or is that just me? Is
it's a stretch, but a futile and stupid gesture could also be one. Joel and Wednesday's eyes meet, and it's not love, but it is a bond of outsiderness.
Yep, it is.
Back at the Addams mansion, Debbie reads Cinderella to Pubert, changing details to flatter Fester when she hears him snooping. When the parents return, Fester gushes to Gomez about how he's falling for Debbie. He asks if Gomez and Morticia will do a double date if Debbie agrees to have dinner with him. Of course they will.
I'm always asking you. You set me up with somebody and we'll go on a double date. You never do it.
I will as soon as I find somebody to set you up with, Joe. I promise. Back at camp, it's life-saving swim training. Wednesday and Amanda are paired off.
Now, one of you will be the drowning victim, and the other one gets to be our lifesaver.
I'll be the victim. All your life.
Fucking loved that joke so goddamn much. It's my favorite exchange in the movie.
It's a good line.
Yeah. What was the other thing? It's in the same scene. They're walking. Oh, is that your swimsuit? Is that your overbite? Fucking brutal. That night, Wednesday levels up the girls' barracks ghost storytelling, and the double date happens in a bistro in a cave. There are nose-powdering reassurances and a cork-popping dance number from Gomez and Morticia while Fester impresses Debbie by sticking breadsticks up his nose.
It's always my move.
Yep. That's why it's hard to find you a date, Joe. Afterwards, Debbie and Fester go for a moonlit walk through the family graveyard, where Debbie lies and Fester admits about being a virgin. He's all too happy to admit that he would die for her. By the time they get back to the mansion, they are ready to announce that they are engaged.
Yes, very quick.
At camp, Wednesday and Pugsley get a letter about Fester's engagement. They are horrified. When they won't participate in a group hug, they are sentenced to time in the Harmony Hut. This is a cabin painted in pastels and decorated inside with the equivalent of cat memes. They are soon joined by Joel, who's there because he wanted to read a book instead of doing camp stuff.
The Harmony Hut is their version of the Hot Box from Cool Hand Luke.
Yep. Or the Pokey from the Matilda movie.
I didn't see the Matilda movie.
Uh-huh. That's fine.
For it.
Somebody in the audience will get it.
Okay.
At night, they try to make a break for it, but are caught at the perimeter fence by the entire rest of camp, who proceed to torment them with Kumbaya. Later that night, Wednesday will become a bit enamored with Joel when he describes being deathly allergic to fabric softener. That hit a little close to home for me lately.
Oh, yes. We don't need to get into that.
Audience, I recently discovered that I'm allergic to polyester.
And the worst place you can find that out.
No, next to the worst place you can find
in that region, I guess.
That place was actually spared, thankfully. She invites him to be her +1 at Fester's wedding.
Well, didn't you say you sat down and you filled it?
Yeah, the worst place would be the other side of me.
Ah, well, both are bad.
Right, but one is slightly worse than the other. The next day, at the mansion, there are bachelorette and bachelor parties happening. At the latter of those, a pop-out-of-the-cake girl may or may not have been manslaughtered. The wedding happens at night and is officiated by Cousin It, a being entirely made of what looks like Axl Rose's hair.
Lieutenant is played by John Franklin. We've both seen him in The Addams Family, 1991, and I've seen him in Wag the Dog. I assume I've seen actual face and not him as Harry Being.
Yes. Vows are said by Fester and dittoed by Debbie, and they're married. The ceremony took just about as long as mine and Kit's.
Mm-hmm.
They're driven off by Lurch in a car that is dragging a corpse. And now the film is halfway over.
I have to say, full disclosure, I thought this movie was funny, but that scene when they drive up with that body back there, I guess I forgot about it. I laughed so hard. That really shocked me. I did not expect that to see that.
Hey, it made it into the cold open.
Yes.
Debbie and Fester go to Hawaii for their honeymoon. She tries to kill him by dropping a boombox into the hot tub, but he can't kill Fester, so Debbie has to try killing him in other ways, like emotionally. She makes it a condition of their sexual relationship that he never see his family again. And of course, because she has him by the balls, as it were, he agrees.
Now, curiously enough, you lived in Hawaii, but you never actually honeymooned in Hawaii, right?
Right.
So you did the exact opposite
Yes.
about how other people do it.
I mean, I lived in Hawaii because I was stationed in the Navy in Hawaii.
Yes. Wasn't your idea.
Yeah. Kamehameha loop. Yeah, okay. It's been a long time since I actually thought about that.
At least you were in Hawaii.
Yeah, at least.
Man, if I lived in Hawaii, I would never have left. Of course, I'm assuming I could have afforded living there, which is a very expensive place.
It is. Sometime later, Gomez makes a prairie oyster for Pubert, while he and Morticia talk about how Fester never calls anymore.
What is a prairie oyster? That's a bowls, right?
No. A prairie oyster is raw egg, like vodka Worcestershire sauce.
Oh, right. That's what he was. Oh, I didn't know that's what he was making. Okay, I saw him making that drink, but I didn't know that was a prairie oyster.
Right, and he mixes it in the bottle and he hands it to Pubert and says, hair of the pup. Because it was a hair of the dog sort of like hangover cure, which there is no scientific evidence that it does shit. At camp, Wednesday reads a letter from Fester saying that he can never see them again.
Aww.
Yeah, and Gomez gets a similar message in a postcard and is heartbroken over it. Morticia consoles him with some BDSM. And it's done such, like, the wordplay in this is fucking great. Like,
It's very
the old ball and chain. Oh, I'll go get them. Back stateside, Debbie has Fester undergo a makeover since she has to be actually married to him for a while. At Camp Chippewa, Gary and Becky announce their camp play, a retelling of the first Thanksgiving. Amanda gets the lead pilgrim role, and all the thin white girls get to be pilgrims, while all the Chippewas, as Becky calls them, are one larger girl and any boy that isn't white and a couple that are nerds.
Mm-hmm.
Wednesday is surprised to be cast as Pocahontas. The Addamses go visit Fester, but Debbie has him bosomly bewitched and refuses to see them. They go to the police, in particular to a cameo by Nathan Lane, but since no laws have been broken, there's nothing to be done.
And we don't have Nathan Lane's credits.
No.
Well, you all know who Nathan Lane is.
Yeah. During rehearsals for the Thanksgiving play, Wednesday, Pugsley, and Joel refuse to participate. So they are sentenced once again to the Harmony Hut, this time to watch a series of films. Bambi from 1942, Lassie Come Home from 1943, The Little Mermaid from 1989, The Sound of Music from 1965, something from the Brady Bunch, but not the Brady Bunch movie because that came out in 1995 and Addams Family Values came out in 1993, and Annie from 1982.
I believe it's just the Brady Bunch TV show.
Yeah, but holy shit, this just became a list of things for me to put on our list.
Have you seen any of those? Well, Bambi's too old for our show, so is Lassie Comes Home.
Nothing is too old for our show if we don't want it to be. But I've seen The Little Mermaid and The Sound of Music.
I've seen The Sound of Music. I've seen Lassie Come Home. I don't remember it, but I've definitely seen it. And, of course, I guess we both seen the Brady Bunch movie, right?
No, I haven't.
Oh, you haven't? Oh.
No.
Surprise. And I seen Annie, yes.
Annie was the hardest one for me to get because I didn't recognize the song. Because all you hear is the Tomorrow song. Like, the end of one of the versions of the Tomorrow song. I'm like, where the fuck does that come from? Took me a while, but I found it. They emerge from the hut, feigning normalcy. Wednesday even smiles. And for patrons, I've dropped a picture of this smile into the script so you could see it. It terrifies Amanda. We are 2/3 through the movie, and there's a new problem on the home front. Because all good movies throw an extra problem in 2/3 of the way through.
Sure.
Pubert is sick. He's sick in a way that causes him to have curly blonde hair and be dressed in a baby blue onesie. Horrifying. The cause? Uncle Fester leaving. Makes sense? No. Good. Onward.
Well, I have to tell you, if I had a baby and one day I saw him with curly blonde hair, I would freak out as well.
Back at Fester's new digs, Debbie leaves him a 3-week anniversary present. A box of dynamite with a timer. She goes to get champagne, forgetting that Fester can't really die. She goes to drink and carouse with a bunch of sailors in a bar that Kid is pretty sure is a gay bar, one of whom is a cameo by Tony Shalhoub.
Yep.
She comes back just in time to watch her mansion explode, but is angered to see that Fester is just fine. She pulls a gun on him, and then Thing runs her over, then drives him and Fester back to the Addams mansion. Debbie grabs her car and is hot on their tail.
I wonder, can he be penetrated by bullets? I mean, I'm sure if you shot him, he wouldn't die. But would bullets really go into his body? Would they just bounce off?
He's not invulnerable. He's just immortal. At camp, it's time for the play. It starts off with Mormon levels of white and delightsome, before this scene becomes for this movie what Marv and Harry getting their asses kicked became for Home Alone. The only thing anybody remembers.
I don't think that's true.
I just watched on YouTube before the show a trauma surgeon analyzing all of the injuries from the Marv and Harry getting the shit kicked out of them scene. It was lovely to hear. Wednesday leads the Chippewas in an uprising, torching the village and setting the kids on a road to cannibalism. After, Wednesday and Joel share a kiss through the perimeter fence. She keeps her eyes open. And, again, for the patrons, there's a picture of this in the script. Pugly steals the camp van and drives him and his sister back home for the final showdown.
See, if he's old enough to drive, he's old enough for have a relationship with Thing.
He's old enough to drive because his feet can reach the pedals. That doesn't mean he's old enough to legally have a license to operate a motor vehicle.
Oh, technicalities.
The funny thing is that actor was in the transportation department on a bunch of other films.
I saw that, yeah. That is funny. You're right. I didn't thought to make the connection. You're right. We were seeing his future right there on film.
At the Addams mansion, Pubert's sickness has spread to his room, and Morticia is mortified to be reading The Cat in the Hat. Granny summons her to her husband's side. He appears to be dying.
My baby is ill, and my husband is dying. Oh, Mama, what shall I do?
Well, you have a black dress.
Fucking solid gold, man. It was fucking wonderful. And Morticia smiles really nice at that.
No, it is funny, but at the same time, it hits a little weird because her husband really is dying. The actor literally is dying.
Yeah, I'm not sure that they knew that during film.
No, well, apparently she knew he was sick.
Yeah.
That I read an interview and she said that the actress,
Angelica Houston.
Excuse me, Angelica Houston, a woman you thought was black. Angelica Houston, she said that they knew that he was sick. They didn't realize how sick, but it's pretty clear that he was sick. And
I'm going to take a moment just here to point out, like, so much detail goes into these characters. One of the things about Morticia is they have a light shining across her face in any scene she's in that just gives this sort of ethereal glow to it. And it's a lovely practical effect. And like when they were wheeling her in the hospital on the gurney, that was actually shot with her up against the wall so that her hair would stay perfect.
Ah, okay. Didn't know that.
Yeah.
Funny.
So Fester makes it back just ahead of the kids, and Gomez immediately recovers. Not only that, but baby Pubert is also now recovered. Unfortunately, Debbie is also just fine, and armed, and arrives there too. She rounds the family into electric chairs.
Which they just happen to have in the house.
Well, yeah, I mean, they're the Addamses.
Indeed.
She's about to electrocute them all when baby Pubert goes through a series of Rube Goldberg-esque actions, like riding Chekhov's roller skate from earlier, that eventually electrocutes Debbie herself into a pile of ash and credit cards. The family is saved.
So we just saw a scene where a baby murders a woman.
Yep.
For a laugh. And does it work? Yeah, it certainly does.
Yep.
Oh, God. All right, I'll say it up front. I love this movie.
Let's finish the summary.
I'm sorry. Yes, let's finish.
On Pubert's first birthday, the family throws a party and even invites Joel. And Cousin It's new nanny seems way more Fester's type.
This is our new nanny. Dementia.
Dementia. What a beautiful name.
It means insanity.
My name's Fester. It means to rot.
Just the way he delivers that line. My name's Fester. It means to rot. The end.
Well, no. You're leaving out the real end.
Okay, the real end is that a hand comes up from Debbie's grave and grabs Joel's hand when he goes to leave flowers on it. I think that was Thing, though, because Debbie is a pile of ash.
Yes, but it still scares the hell out of him.
Yep.
And after Wednesday says, that's what I would do to my husband, I'd scare him to death.
Yep.
I was like, oh, it was a little unfair to him. What did he do? He didn't deserve that. But still, yes, that is the real end. And you know what? I'm going to start this off since I already said it up front.
Yeah.
Anyway. Yeah, I love this movie. I think it works 100%. I found it very funny. I liked its jokes. 90% of them still work. I think maybe one joke in particular, maybe people won't get the Carrie Fisher joke. I don't know if you remember that one. If people remember, not Carrie Fisher, Amy Fisher. Carrie Fisher people remember. Amy Fisher people might forget.
So here's the thing. When you were telling the Bobbitts story, for a second, I was conflating the Amy Fisher story and the Bobbitts story.
Well, that makes sense. I mean, these are big news stories at the time. And I mean, years later, you can put them together in your head. Sure. Amy Fisher was called the Long Island Lolita. It's a ridiculous story because she was a child and the guy really responsible was the one who blah, 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 whatever. Anyway, there's a joke about her in the movie, and I'm sure people who weren't around at the time are going to like, who the hell is that?
Yep.
But other than that, most of the jokes, the vast majority do work. People sell the jokes like crazy. It just works. Still works. I think it still works. I loved it. What about you?
Yeah, samesies. Like it's one of the nicer times I've had on this podcast because sometimes these movies traumatize the shit out of me. But this movie is just delightful. Part of why is because of Charles Addams' characters that he created. He created these people to be off-brand horror tropes, and they are their own. Like they're their own thing. Like they are up there. Like you can dress as Cousin It for Halloween. People will know who it is.
Yes.
It doesn't have to be in the regular horror canon. It just worked so well that it did that.
Mm-hmm.
Like I would love to see. I'd actually love to see a crossover Addams Family and Munsters thing happen. But that's just me wanting to fuck the world.
Munsters was a complete ripoff of the Addams Family, obviously.
Yeah. I don't know what else to say that you didn't. Like, the jokes are solid jokes. The writing was really, really good. And the characters, like, develop and learn. It's crazy.
I just remember thinking of a joke that really worked. The first joke that I still remember from this movie, obviously I just seen it, but I remember years later before I rewatched it for the podcast, was when she says to Gomez, I hear you're a real lady killer. And he goes, acquitted.
Acquitted, yeah.
I remember hearing that in the theater and I fell out of my seat. I'm like, wow, that's really funny. Oh, good movie. Good movie.
Yep, this was a good movie. Thank you, patrons. We needed that we needed that this month.
All right, coming up. What's next, ladies and gentlemen? Well, the thing is, this was a Patron's Choice episode, and the poll for next month's film is already up on Patreon. The choices are Misery from 1990, Taken from 2009, and True Grit from 2010.
So what's the theme here, Joe?
Kidnapping.
Kidnapping is the theme.
Is the theme. Everybody in every one of those movies has gotten kidnapped. Or someone is saving someone who's been kidnapped. Well, two of them is saving someone, and one person is a kidnappee. But it all involves kidnapping.
Alrighty.
Anyway, If you want to vote but are not a patron, you can fix that by becoming one at patreon.com/DTSWpod.
Just like our newest patron, once again, Mountie of Madness, thank you so much.
Thank you, Mountie of Madness. Now, George, what's up next?
Next week, we will be talking about Cool Runnings from 1993.
So I guess that's it for this episode. I'm Joe Dixon. Thanks for listening.
And I'm George Romacka. Thanks for listening indeed, because if a podcast drops and there's nobody around to hear it, it's just another collection of ones and zeros that doesn't matter.
You have gone too far. You have married Fester. You have destroyed his spirit. You have taken him from us. All that I could forgive. But Debbie...
What?
Pastels?
You've been listening to Does This Still Work? Produced by Joe Dixon and George Romacka. The hosts can be reached via social media, email, or the contact page at dtswpod.com. Be good to yourself and others, because that still works.
And podcast news.
No. You just said podcast
Broadcast news. Podcast news. Wow. Interesting Freudian slip. I'll just do it again.
So, from stupid questions. In the 1970s, did people really cover their sofas with cellophane? If so, why? So, from no stupid questions. Unsure if my wife left her curling iron on. We are over an hour away and won't be back until tomorrow morning. Will it burn the house down? Random question. What smells bad, but kinda good? So, back to stupid stuff. How comes biting the bottom lip is considered sexy, but biting the top lip isn't? No stupid questions. Why are buttons on women's clothing on the left side, while they are on the right side for men? And 2 random questions. Dumb thought. Thank you for admitting that up front. How often do we actually use a full cartridge of ink in a pen?